Hi folks, this is take 4 of me recreating a demonstration that my friend and colleague Anita Wheelgrass walked me through this morning, introducing me to getting started in Gravity Sketch, which is a really cool 3D creation tool that at least parts of it are free to get started in and download 3D files that you can then use in other applications. What you see here is I'm in Gravity Sketch, the application. Oops, I'm going to take this off, straighten out my hair. What you see here is from inside the Gravity Sketch application, and I've paused it so that I could stream to the desktop, which is being recorded through OBS. And I can resume. And now I'm in this lobby area, or the loading screen of Gravity Sketch, and I can get started by using this pointer. One thing that I found is that when you near something that you can interact with, this little pointer will come up, and when it contacts something you can interact with, it will change color. Right now it's purple, and some things, like a keyboard, the minute you press on the keys, they will be interacted with. But some things like this one, you have to then pull the trigger on this thing. Woo! And I've already gotten started. So let's see, I can do. Now we got a blank slate. But as you can see, by default, you can just simply start drawing with this neat tubular mesh object. And then when your controller gets near enough, it will highlight in red, and then you can use this trigger on the base of your middle finger on the controller and allow you to grab it. And as long as you're pulling that trigger, you're holding it. You can move it around. When you're not selected it, you can undo. You can press the red undo button there and undo the actions that you just took. Or if you have it selected, it turns into a minus button and you can delete it entirely. The other thing that Anita started with, whoops, and this is a way to change the color of your object, but that's the next step. The blue hamburger button that you can see here, Anita recommends enabling this vertical lock, which wasn't enabled by default, which I guess helps your floor level stay accurate. And then you can just press the hamburger button again to get out of that. And then where the magic happens is under this tool button, the purple or magenta button with the paintbrush and pencil. And you can see by default the ink style that I was using a moment ago. There's also a point style, which is more like a Bezier curve that you can then move the points around afterwards, I assume. And then surface is what I've seen Anita demonstrate before, and she walked me through this morning. Because I've already been in here and done some things, this panel has changed. The 2 custom surface options were not here. I believe these are recordings of my previous settings that I had set up. So the way we got started today was to go to select sheet, and then these options come up, and if you want, well, so I'll just show what that looks like. Close that button, and then to start, you pull this trigger, and you'll see there's this wire between them. Actually, I'm just going to change the color for for the fun of it. So now you can see there's a wire between them, and if you pull the right trigger, as you've got that activated, you can start to extrude that shape out anywhere in space. And I just love this because this is a 3D object that I just scribbled with no trouble at all, and it's very intuitive and very like physically, it feels like I'm actually working with a media in 3D space, and I love that. Much easier conceptually than using a mouse and keyboard to do operations in 3D space. So I'm gonna delete that and bring back up these options. One thing you can do is turn on round corners, and these buttons here, you can see when my thumb hovers over them, they gray out. I'm just pressing the pink one, the magenta one there. So you start with your left finger, and remember I turned on rounded corners, so yeah, you can see what a rounded corner object looks like. And you can also undo and undo if you haven't done a whole lot of steps. So I am going to turn off rounded corners. Sub D is also like a smoothing. So let's see what that does, what that looks like. Left, right. You can start anywhere in space. I have no idea what the sub D is doing in this case, but I mean, that's neato. Delete. So what I was going to demonstrate is round surface, round corners. Don't need low poly. Surface from spline, bridge curves. So it looks to me like you could draw like those tubular squiggles and then have a surface that goes between any two surfaces. Point mode, I think, would let you adjust it afterwards. But I'm just going to go to surface from spline. And what I did earlier in my test recording was to try drawing a fairy wings for my MX Pet Rock application. It's a cute little Unity made WebGL, made in Unity WebGL game that I developed almost 10 years ago, and I've just been kind of resurrecting it and adding new stuff to it in recent years now that I know a lot more about Unity development. And one of the items on the to-do list is to build some fairy wings, add some fairy wings into the application. It's a little idle game where you can put items on a rock. You can change the rocks, what it's made of, like turquoise or granite, and you can modify its environment a little bit, like put it on a red carpet or on a sheet of silk, and then you can add toys to the rock's environment. There's a teddy bear and googly eyes. Anyway, that's all there is to it. And I want to add some fairy wings. So with my two, I start with the left. Oops. Let's see. I think maybe okay. Let's see, clear. We're all learning together. Let's try this. Okay. So I'm gonna start here and start to. Okay, now I have the first part of my wing and um, and it's really neat how just naturally you can interact with this object. Oops. Yeah, so I started that in a really awkward space, but I can just rotate it and whoop, put it where I want it. And I think I actually want this piece to be a little sharper, kind of like the previous one. I don't necessarily know what the hey I'm doing, so forgive me. So it looks like each point, and I guess because I didn't put down 3 separate points, it doesn't confirm until you put down more than 2 points, which makes sense because 3D objects can't be more or less than, well, fully 3D objects can't be less than 3 points filled with a face. Okay, so now I have this, I don't know if there's a way to edit it afterwards. I didn't get that far in my tutorial. Actually, let's just undo, there we go. But like, I think ideally this piece will be a little flatter. But so I'm going to save this object by going into this hamburger menu. And let's see, save. Anita let me know that you need to save it to the launching pad, to the cloud. And I can just save it and save here into my files. And like I said, so this is one of those where if you touch it with the tip, you're gonna actually commit. So I'm gonna type wings. I don't have to pull my trigger. That was making it mess up when I pulled my trigger. It was like moving everything again. Oops, underscore 2. Okay, and then your sketch, and that's just a gravity sketch file. Now I need, if I want to export it as an FBX, and there are other presets here, and let's see, custom export OBJ, alias, I have no idea what that is, VRED, I don't know, but Blender modeling, that's what I'm familiar with. Again, you gotta change it. B L A R underscore. Now that object is ready. This 3D object, oh, it even has handy little measuring guides. It's ready to export, so I can confirm. And it says it's exporting your file. After it's done exporting, it'll be available on Launchpad. So I'm going to just take my headset off. Oh, hi. And then I'm going to turn this up and Apologies. Go to my landing pad application, and now you can see my first export that Anita and I worked on together, and then my second, which I tried deleting, and interestingly enough, it will let you delete it from the files, but for some reason the cloud export, and you can even empty the trash bin, the cloud export hangs onto a reference of it and you can't access it, but you can see that it was there and deleted. So that was my first attempt at Wings. So I'm going to select this FBX from my cloud exports and download it. And I'm happy. And then I'm going to open up a new instance of Blender and enable screencast keys. Import FBX from my downloads, Blender Wings. And so this is how your object will come in. And it doesn't look the way it used to, you'll notice. And one of the things I figured out from these surface objects is that you need to re-add some subdivision surface. So in Blender 4.1, you can add a modifier and either search for it by name, or it seems to retain a list of your most recently used. So I add a subsurface modifier, crank up the levels to at least 3, and then I can select these other objects with the one that has the, let's do it to 4. No, let's do it to 3. There's no appreciable difference between 3 and 4 that justifies the geometry. And this is great because you can make a low poly object out of something that was initially high poly. But so now that I have a modifier on one of them, I can, and that is highlighted in yellow, which is active. I can press Control L and then copy modifiers. This will transfer the modifier data from the active objects, the one that's highlighted in yellow, into the selected objects, the ones that are highlighted in orange. And ta-da! Now I have my 3D object. Another thing that Anita explained to me is that this is how objects from Gravity Sketch will come in FBX into Blender, parented to an empty object, or each one will have their own empty object that it's parented to, and that may not be convenient for your end use case. So one thing you can do is select the actual objects that you want to keep, press Alt-P, and choose Clear Parent and Keep Transform. That means that it will remove the relationship to those empty objects and just leave the objects there, but they'll be with the same transform. They'll be the same scale, they'll be the same rotation, and the same position in space that they were before. And so now we can select the 3 or 4 objects we do want to keep, and Control I to inverse the selection and just delete all those spare objects. And I can join this object and it's still editable. I can apply the modifier and now it's no longer, the subdivision amount is no longer editable, but it's now real geometry. And I would personally, I would do something like this. I would reorient that in space. Tapping RR lets you just freehand the gizmo and press it or place it in some way relative to the axis that you want it. And this is just for my use case. I want to make these low poly and flat in one dimension. So S, Y, 0. We'll flatten all those out. And they look the same from the front. But there you have it. Now, that you'll have some self intersections because of the way I constructed it, and that's a bit advanced for the gravity sketch portion of this. But I could also select loops, select boundary loop, select the other objects, delete all those vertices, and then individually fill them, or Control Z, or Control F to get more options and do a grid fill. And under grid fill, you can adjust how many subdivisions it is. You can also switch between simple and, I don't know, complex. Anyway, Control F, grid fill, Control F, grid fill. You can also Shift R to redo the same thing twice, but that Control F, grid, oops, that's not what I meant to do. Control F, grid fill. I guess Control R or Shift R didn't actually recreate the same settings, so never mind that.